our next guest says the conflict involving Iran remains volatile and continues to be a key factor driving the markets. Joining us now is Jason Schenker, president of Prestige Economics. Jason, thanks very much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here today.
Okay, you say this is still a key factor. The markets seem to think it's over and done with. What's the difference between the two sides then?
Well, I think the reality is we could still see some fits and starts going forward. This is a big move. This is a lot of progress. We've seen oil prices come down. You've seen equities rebound. You're going to see some more dollar weakness likely on the back of that. I think this is a lot of progress, and I think it is a good move in the right direction. And I think we're going to see this kind of push and pull go forward. But I think it seems like what the markets have been telling us, honestly, for a couple of weeks now, is that really the worst seems to be behind us. Now that we had that first round of talks in Islamabad back on April 11th, more talks likely ahead, we're seeing some progress. And it's still an evolving situation, but there's a lot less fear in the market than there was a few weeks ago. There's a lot more confidence in where we could go from here. And I also think, following the latest CPI report, with core CPI only at 2.6% year on year, the Fed could still have license to cut rates, say in June, if it became necessary due to slower job growth, or if the Q1 GDP report comes in only lukewarm.
So we want to stay with the war for a second. You call it part of a conflict of Cold War II. How does that tie in? Where's that connection?
Yeah, the biggest part of Cold War II really is that if we look back at February 4, 2022, before Russia began its war on Ukraine at the Beijing Olympics, China and Russia issue a joint statement saying that there's no limit to their cooperation and that they strongly uphold the outcomes of World War II, right? A weird thing to say in 2022, but what that really means is that there are these broader supranational ambitions, and we saw then Russia invade Ukraine. And of course now with Iran, its terrorist proxies and everything that's been going on in the Middle East for the last 2.5 years, all of those things are part and parcel of that. If you look at the military technology cooperation, information sharing, weapons development, all of that is very public. And on January 17th, 2025, Russia and Iran announced a cooperation, a strategic cooperation agreement. Again, that's in January 17, 2025. That's been going on for a little while here. I think there are potential upside knock-on effects that could happen from this conflict. You have seen the destruction of some ballistic missile manufacturing capabilities within Iran. Some of those missiles were being sent to Russia in its war in Ukraine. What we could see going forward is if Iran comes to good terms with the U.S., if the U.S. has terms they're looking for, which really does include Iran giving up its nuclear weapons program, you may see Russia has a degraded ability to wage war in Ukraine, and that could mean peace breaks out other places. But all of this is because Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, previously Venezuela, all part of what the Wall Street Journal called the axis of sanctions evasion, what for years I've been calling and wrote a book about called Cold War II. These adversaries have been working together, and it looks like we're kind of trying to knock them off the list here of potential adversaries and potential conflict regions. And while where we go from here with Iran could be somewhat still uncertain, the trajectory is quite positive, especially after the announcements of what we saw last night and today.
So now there still have, people argue, we're not sure if it's the same regime, we're not sure who's in charge even in Iran. People saying that the nuclear capabilities may still be there, or the materials may still be there. Did America accomplish what it set out to do with Iran, do you think?
I'm not sure if we have. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think we all exactly know what the proximate cause was of this conflict and how we got exactly to where we are right now, what was the key trigger point. But again, what was public and unclassified for the world to see was that Russia and Iran had this agreement not only to share information and develop weapons technology, but also around nuclear energy. We know that had been in place. Everyone, that was very clear. It was unclassified information. We also know that they had the opportunity to give up the nuclear weapons program, and they consistently refused to do so. And by the way, this is something that many presidents out of the U.S., Republican and Democrat, have been trying for decades to get Iran to give up. If they do, in fact, give up that nuclear weapons program, there's probably going to be a really big benefit to that, not just in terms of easing tensions in the Middle East, potentially diffusing Iran's terrorist-funded network of proxies, but also potentially for maybe economic opportunity, maybe for a new chapter to begin. But as you've noted, we don't exactly know what the leadership situation looks like in Iran, which is why there are still some uncertainties here. And this will continue to be a driver of markets. But the trajectory right now looks really good. And there's even a bigger upside case from here. Again, if the destruction and erosion of Iranian weapons production capabilities has an effect on and degrades Russia's ability to wage war in Ukraine, maybe peace breaks out there too. And then the focus probably would be on making sure that China's ambitions to control Taiwan don't turn into a kinetic conflict of a larger sort.
Now, with Russia, though, could it also make them more dangerous if they feel isolated and pressed against a wall?
I don't necessarily think that's the bigger risk. I think that right now the Ukrainians have been holding them at bay for years, but this is another marginal pressure point. If it looks like another one of their allies, right, Venezuela gets taken off the table, there's a lot of rumblings about Cuba. If Iran gets taken off the table, if Cuba gets taken off the table, suddenly Russia may see, well, China's still here, but there may be favorable terms to be had to come to a ceasefire. And I think that what this administration, in my opinion, the Trump administration tends to be very outcome focused rather than process driven. A lot of folks that adds uncertainty, makes people nervous. It's something we haven't seen before, but many presidents across many administrations have tried process. Process in some cases doesn't seem to work as well. If you want peace, sometimes you have to fight for it, and the world is what you make it. And so if the outcome is to prevent larger kinetic conflicts, to prevent Cold War II, something not great, from turning into World War III, which is something worse, then I think that's going to be the focus, is on containment and trying to build what Sun Tzu would have called golden bridges, right? You build people a golden bridge to have an off-ramp. And that's what maybe with Iran, we're probably going to see some golden bridges here. And I think this focus around the nuclear weapons program, if they do give that up, if they do give up the fissile material, I think that would be a significant success that, again, many administrations, Democratic and Republican, have been trying to get done.
I got to wrap you up there, Jason. We're running out of time. I got to wrap you up there. I hate to cut you off, but thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Jason Schenker is the president of Prestige Economics.